Hello, my lovely rose garden. Avalon here with a surprise unscripted video. Not a lot of these around anymore, but I had the idea for this pretty late one night, sent it over to the patron Discord server, and they all agreed that I should give it a go. If you would also like to help me make these harebrained decisions way too late in the evening for me to still be awake, feel free to join the Patreon. For just $2 a month, you get access to the Discord server, exclusive coupons to use at our new Etsy store, and many more benefits, all just for $2 a month. The link will be in the description. Feel free to check it out. So what am I doing in this video? Well, as the title says, I'm going to be ranking the POV characters that I have written, so the character point of views that I've written, and I am ranking the writing on the point of view, not the character. So get that misconception out of your head right now if that's what you thought this was. I am not ranking the characters, I'm ranking their point of view chapters and how I felt I did writing them. Of course, the moment I press record, Winnie decides she wants to get in my microphone box. Please stay out of the box, Winnie. And it looks like this pretty much defaulted to alphabetical order, so I guess that's what I'm going to do. Some of these are from books that are already published and available on the Etsy store that I previously mentioned, link in description. And other ones are from works in progress, so books that I'm still working on and haven't actually been published yet. So maybe minor spoilers in case that you are following my works and maybe weren't aware of which characters for things like Stellar Eclipse or the new Constellations, the sequel to Like Falling Stars. If you weren't aware of who was going to get a POV in that, might be some minor spoilers here. Alright, so let's get started. We're going to start off alphabetically with Anne. And I swear this will be the last time that I plug the Etsy store, but the character button art here that was done by Ray is available in our store. You can get it as a button, and it's super cute in person. Okay, last plug, I promise. And for this one, I'm going to place her in could be better. I also suppose I should explain my ranking system before I go further. So, Rick Riordan, my all-time favorite author, of course I put him up at the top. I really enjoy how he writes characters. I think that they all have such life to them, and they're really fun to read about and read through the lens of. So the top tier is Riordan. The second tier, not quite as good, but still really fun, really good, is Tui Sutherland. I am still a fan of her Wings of Fire series, even though I'm starting to kind of pull away from it and get out of that series, since the human characters are becoming more prominent in some of the books, and I'm not really interested in that, and I just don't really have the shelf space for a long-running series like Wings of Fire is turning out to be. I very much doubt that it's going to stop at book 15, and I really don't want 15 plus books, even if I love them and they're about dragons, of the same series on my shelf. So even though I am pulling away, I do still think that Sutherland's character writing is really good and really fun. I also liked the Menagerie series that she wrote with her sister, so that is my second tier. The second to last tier is going to be Dean Koontz. Could be better. So some of Dean Koontz's characters I fall in love with, and they're so great, and they have such a comedic voice and great timing, and some of them I really don't vibe with. And sometimes they just feel like rehashes of the same kinds of jokes and the same kinds of humor, and that is definitely Dean Koontz's writing style coming through, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, depending on the situation. So Koontz could be better. Not bad, but not the best. And the bottom tier is Aaron Hunter, where I need to do some more work. There are interesting concepts here, but maybe they're not being used to their fullest potential, or maybe it's not coming off the way I intended. It's something there, there's something here that could be good, but it needs more work to come through. And I was going to have a 5th tier for Sarah J. Maas, which is, wow, what a train wreck, but I'm not that critical of myself, I guess. Like, I don't know, maybe you guys have read my works, maybe you think that there's a character point of view that was just garbage, but I don't think anything is that bad, and it would feel too much like self-deprecation to put a tier of that. I can't think of a POV that I would have put in that tier, so I'm leaving the bottom one at Aaron Hunter. Just needs some work, needs a lot of editing and a lot of polishing to make it worthwhile. So yeah, so that's my tier system, and Anne lands in the could be better tier, which honestly is probably where Nicholas is going to go too. In fact, I'm just going to break alphabetical order and put him there now. The character writing in Like Falling Stars, I think, is just fine. The perspective writing definitely could be better. I think that the way it's written, I have the point of view bounce around between Anne and Nicholas, where it's like a third person limited, but they often switch within the same chapter, sometimes back and forth. I didn't really have a firm grasp of doing a POV from a character and then transitioning to another character at the point that I wrote Like Falling Stars, because you can definitely do that where you have a third person where it's not just focused on one character for the entire chapter and then you switch to a new character in the next chapter, which is what I do in Stellar Eclipse. You can have it switch within the same chapter, but I don't think that I set up the transitions very well between Anne and Nicholas. I think maybe a third person omnipresent point of view would have done better for the fairy tale theming that I was going for in this book, and that would have eased those point of view transitions a lot better. I don't think it's bad. I think that both Anne and Nicholas are fun and interesting characters to read from the perspective of. Obviously, they have very different views on things, and I think that does still come across, but the transitions were pretty choppy in some places, and I just think that it could have been done better. So I'm going to put them in the Koontz tier. Both of them go there. Azzy is going to go to Sutherland. Pretty good. So Azzy is one of, if not the main protagonist of Stellar Eclipse. His POV is in all 3 of the currently being worked on books. Cloudless Rain and Dark Lightning are already out. He has a POV in both of them, and he will also have the fairly primary perspective in Echoed Thunder as well. So the books 1, 2, and 3 all have his perspective. He's kind of the guiding character through the entire series. I do have a couple of books that don't include the main 4 planned where he won't have a point of view, but for like the main series quote-unquote books for Stellar Eclipse, Azzy is kind of the main character, and I really love his point of view. I really love exploring his gift, which is being able to hear the intentions and hear the emotions that people try to hide. So he may not always understand what someone is saying, but he'll always understand what they're feeling or thinking by listening to what he calls their true voice, which is all those things inside of them that they aren't necessarily expressing with words. And that is so fun to work with and to come up with imagery for and explore. I've always had a lot of fun writing Azzy. The reason why he's in Sutherland and not Riordan is because there are some times where I forget that he's supposed to have a limited vocabulary. He doesn't come off as sounding like he is the age that he is supposed to be because he is a teenager. In the first book, he's 14 or 15. In the second book, he's like 15, 16. And then in the third book, he's 16, 17-ish. And he doesn't always sound like he is that age, especially given that he was very, very sheltered. He was kept away from civilization for most of his life. Sometimes he has a more verbose vocabulary than he should really have, and I get a lot of editing notes about that when I send the book off to editors. Janie, my line editor, usually sends me back notes like, this doesn't sound correct for this character, this sounds too mature, this sounds too adult, tone this down, use a different, smaller word here. So I would say still that he's a pretty good POV, but not my absolute favorite. He's not like god tier POV. He's just pretty good. He's really fun to work with, and people really seem to like him, and apparently I wrote him as autistic without meaning to, because I had not yet come to the realization that I'm probably on the spectrum, and I wrote a lot of myself into him, and then people were like, oh yeah, this character's definitely on the spectrum, and I was like, hope that doesn't make me realize anything about myself. Moving on to the other perspective character of Cloudless Rain, and still a prominent character throughout the main series, Bolton. Him, I am gonna go... Oh, I don't know if he's, like, favorite. I think I'm letting my feelings for the character get in the way, and that is not what I'm ranking. I'm gonna go with pretty good. I think he was pretty good, too. It's been a while since I've written his perspective, so I don't fully remember the experience, but he is pretty sarcastic. But there's a lot of exposition that happens with his chapters because it is the first book of the series that I think maybe holds it back from hitting that top tier. Because there is just so much time spent explaining things, and I think he is great at that. I think that it works for the kind of character he is, as well as just being an entry point for readers into the series. But it does also take away from him having more of his own personal flair. If it wasn't a PG-13 book, there'd be a hell of a lot more swearing in his chapters, which unfortunately, because I was trying to keep it more to like that young adult, like upper young adult, you know, like 16, 17, but still not adult, I didn't include that many swears. I think he says fuck one time. I give myself one fuck per book that I am allowed to use, and I think Bolton has used both of them in the Stellar Eclipse series, and he'll probably use the third one too. We'll see. Next, we have our first character from Clouded Moon, Breezeheart. And ironically, for many of the same reasons that Bolton got pretty good, I'm putting him as a favorite, which is very unexpected because he is literally only the perspective character of the prologue for Shifting Roots, and a lot of his perspective is spent setting up that exposition, introducing the reader to the world and laying out some of the foundations before you meet the rest of the characters and the character drama becomes the focus. And surprising, you know, that's a lot of the same reasons that Bolton didn't hit favorite, but for Breezeheart, I think that it actually worked really well. I think it showed a lot of what kind of character he is, where his mind is at, what he's thinking about, and was woven in well enough that it doesn't feel super expository, even though it is definitely an exposition dump. I think it just worked out really well for the kind of dutiful and observant character that he is, to have all the exposition, and since it's just the prologue, it's not bogging down his perspective, because if you've seen the trailer for Clouded Moon, you know that he dies, like, before the first episode, so I didn't need to do too much with him. I think he serves his purpose really well. It is a great introduction to the series, and gives us enough of an impression of his character all within just a few pages. So I am actually very proud of it, and I think he is actually one of my favorite POVs that I've written. And I don't want to write more of it. I think it's just fine the way it is. So, good job, Breezeheart. You were here for a short while, but it was worthwhile. Next up, Christopher. Again, with some of my earlier works, gonna go with Could Be Better. And I swear I'm not just dogging on my early works, but that probably just is gonna be what happens. Because Christopher's POV was just kind of there. There are some fun things with his denial of what's going on around him. That is his big character flaw, is that he is in the middle of a slasher movie and just forcibly denying what's going on around him if it makes him too uncomfortable to face it, which, you know, definitely makes him a terrible horror movie protagonist, which is exactly what he was written to be. He is the worst horror movie protagonist that exists, and I love him for that. But I feel like and I know that the anniversary edition just came out, and it went through an additional round of editing that tightened up some of the writing, fixed some of the problems that would have had this landing in I need to do some work, but I didn't do a full rewrite or anything like that. It was really just polishing up some of the sentence work and Not really changing too many things. I did make it a little bit gayer. Originally, Christopher's other flaw was supposed to be internalized homophobia, but because I didn't really have the page space to address that, and he was the moral high ground character for the book, it just had some very unfortunate implications. So I did end up removing that and just making it that he is attracted to men, and technically speaking he is bisexual, but there's nothing in the book that really points to that. We do see an attraction to men in the book, so if you wanted to headcanon him as gay, I'd accept that too. But yeah, so I just, other than removing that not very well developed flaw and inserting a little bit more explicitly gay representation, I didn't change the book very much when it went through that additional round of edits. So if I could go back like from the ground up and just completely rewrite it now, I think there are some things with Christopher's point of view that I could do better, that I could take to further extremes for comedic purposes or for horrific purposes. And as it is, I think it still is great. I still love Christopher as a character, and I think that his point of view does exactly what it needs to for Alice as it is now. It just, if I had a chance to redo the whole thing, same thing with Like Falling Stars, if I had a chance to redo it, I think there are some ways that I could make it better, but as it is, it's perfectly serviceable. I think it's still a lot of fun to read, and I still recommend it. Dawnfrost is going to go, I think, in the could be betters, and thankfully, because it's a work in progress, I have the chance to go back and reflect and redo some things. Dawnfrost, I think, is going to be a tricky character to write, because the way I interpret her, she is girl boss. Like, she's the girl boss of the cast, and because of that, she has a tendency to push her feelings down and put work first, put her duty to her colony first, and I'm having a hard time balancing where the emotions need to be, instead of just making her a very cold and stoic character, because she's not cold and she's not stoic. She puts on a facade of stoicness, but that's not her actual personality, and I think right now it's leaning more toward her just being a stoic character, and I need to find ways to bring in the warmer side of her personality so that when she does have those emotional outburst moments, they don't feel like a 180 from everything that the reader has seen so far. So she's a bit of a challenge. Not the worst, for sure. She would be passable as she is now, but I think that there is some work to be done to make it better, so I think could be better is where she's gonna land. Eoreka is favorite. I love him. His chapters hurt me so bad. It was really fun to set him up in Cloudless Rain as this character that seems almost larger than life, that is someone that is so looked up to and respected by the people around him, and then you get his point of view in the second book, and he has so much self-loathing and disappointment and trauma and issues that he is constantly just bogging himself down with and constantly critiquing himself, and very much struggles to find what all these good qualities that everyone else readily sees are. He just doesn't get it, why everyone likes him so much. And that juxtaposition from book 1 to book 2 is probably some of my best writing that I've ever done, and I think that that pushes Eoreka definitely all the way to the top as probably one of my best POVs I've ever done, even though it hurt me so bad. If it doesn't hurt me, it can't hurt you, so I have to suffer a little bit so I can, smile in Schadenfreude as my readers clench their hearts, because I too clenched my heart. Golden Pelt is gonna be our first I need to do some work, so once again, it's same thing really with Dawnfrost, but to a more extreme degree, where Golden Pelt is a very ambitious character. He's a very duty and motivation-driven character in terms of, like, if Dawnfrost is girl boss, then Golden Pelt is whatever the male version of that is, CEO, I don't know, Jeffrey Bezos. He is very much driven by his desire to succeed, but he does also have emotions. He does have a pathos for why he's doing what he's doing, and I feel that those two sides of him aren't as connected as they could be. I feel like I need to write his actions with more conviction from his perspective. It's very hard for me not to just look at what he's doing and think, ah, asshole. Like, he doesn't think of himself as the asshole. He thinks of himself as the hero of his own story. So I think what I need to do in his perspective chapters is write it as if he is the hero, as if he is doing the right thing, because in his mind, he totally is. In his mind, everything he's done and is doing is justified. And I don't think that that comes through right now with his chapters because of my own knowledge of what's to come and my own bias leaking in. So I think I really have some work to do with Goldenpelt's character to really make it clear that he is 100% convinced of his own morality, his own righteousness, because right now it's a little too wishy-washy, and that's not going to work out with what we have planned. Ivan, by default, goes to I need to do some more work because I've just barely started writing this character, and I'm working with someone who's been writing this character for years and years and years, because this is actually Ray's character. Ivan belongs to Ray, and I'm now writing him for New Constellations, which is the sequel to Like Falling Stars. So I'm coming in a newbie, basically, with this character, and Ray has been writing him for somewhere in the realm of like 10, maybe more years. So I don't really feel that I have an understanding of what makes this character tick. I don't really know what his reactions would be to certain things, so I really just need to have some conversations with Ray and talk over what kind of character he is. How is he going to respond to the situations that he's going to be put in this book? And just do some character building, because right now I don't have enough information to write him well. And we're all at that point at some time with our characters when they're new and we haven't written them, or when we're starting to work with someone else's characters. Same thing happened with Clouded Moon. I had to just write some drabbles with some of the characters before I even started on the novelization, or the script writing even, because these are characters that my client, Starcat Studio, has been working with for years and are brand new to me. So sometimes it's just default. They go down to I need to do some work, and you just need to do the work. Kata is hard. It's either need to do some work or could be better. I'm gonna actually be a little harsh with myself and do I need to do some work. So Kata does have a small perspective prologue, really. He has a small perspective piece in Dark Lightning, and then you just get his actions through the eyes of Azzy and Aereka for the rest of the book. And his character really came off in a way that I did not mean to impart, but multiple readers have commented on him being kind of a jerk. And honestly, in Dark Lightning, he definitely is kind of a jerk. That's the part of him that we're seeing. And in my mind, I'm like, because I know him more fully as a more rounded character than what we get to see of him in Dark Lightning, I'm thinking about all the emotions he's having, all the different expectations that are on his shoulders, and he's definitely not at his best in Dark Lightning. Circumstances are applying that are definitely having him act not as nobly or as responsibly as he would normally probably act. So I think that I definitely need to do some work. He is going to have a full perspective in one of the books in Stellar Eclipse that I mentioned earlier that Azzy doesn't actually appear in. That one is going to be Kata and Nyasa are going to have the POVs for that book. And I think I need to do some work and reread Dark Lightning a few times and take some notes on what Kata actually does and says in that book, and how the reader currently interprets him through the actions that are included in text, so that I can have his POV in that book bring a fuller picture of who he is as a person, because I think that I did him a little bit of an injustice in Dark Lightning. I don't think I let the reader into what's going on with him quite enough, that it really left him giving an impression that I didn't intend, and so I need to find ways to fix that. So for his perspective, I need to do some work and make sure that he's coming across the way I actually mean for him to come across, and that it's not just me in my head seeing him one way while the text actually portrays him a different way, which can happen. You know, the author has a lot more information than the reader does, and sometimes we forget to give the reader that information. So I need to re-examine Dark Lightning, find where those information gaps are, and then bring that out in the next book that he's in. Llewellyn is made of suffering, and he is my favorite. Are we seeing a trend with who my favorite POVs are? Llewellyn's been really interesting and really difficult. I had this idea that because his gift, he's also, you know, gifted like as he is, and his gift is tied to the present moment, being able to see what's going on anywhere during the present moment. So he can just, he uses it in Cloudless Rain one time to spy, he uses it in Dark Lightning a couple times to find people. It works better with someone that he knows well, or that he has something of theirs that can connect him with them, but we'll get into that more in Echoed Thunder, since that's his POV book. So I had this idea that since his power is tied to the present moment, that all of his chapters should be in present tense. Which has become a trend in books. A lot of YA books nowadays are written in present tense, and it's a challenge. It's something I haven't done before, but I think that it really works for him and who he is, and what he's currently experiencing and going through. And also, his chapters hurt me very much, because a lot of it draws on my experience with depression and mental illness, because of course he is going through some things, and I think it just really makes him a favorite. Just this experimentation I'm having with my style, and the character that I'm doing that experimentation with, and the fact that it just really syncs up. It meshes really well to be having Llewellyn be the character that I'm experimenting with a new style, what that style is, how he's telling the story in his view. It all just comes together very nicely. So even though it's very difficult, I think that definitely makes it a favorite. I loathe myself for this, but I'm putting Michael in pretty good. I hate Michael so much. If it's almost a running gag to anyone who follows Roselin books how much I hate this character. He is everything that I don't like about myself in one person, basically, aside from, of course, the crimes. I have never actually committed a crime, whereas he... well, if you've read Alice, you know. But, yeah, he is just a real piece of shit, and some people love that. I probably would if he wasn't my character. But anyway, I'm digressing. So his actual perspective is kind of a stealth perspective throughout Alice, and you'd have to read the book to know what I mean by that, really, but his perspective is there consistently, and the fact that it just kind of sneaks in is really fun. I loved it. It was one of the first experiments that of course, it was my first book, so it was definitely one of the first major experiments I did with my writing when I wanted to push forward and actually write a book that wasn't just a few snippets on DeviantArt or a fan fiction. It was really interesting, and I ended up really liking it, even though I hate the character. So that's, yeah, he actually is above Christopher and some of my other more favorite characters for that reason. Just, it was fun, it was interesting, and if you can spot his stealth POV, good for you. It is definitely there. Selkas I swear it's not just because he's my favorite character, but also just like Llewellyn, Selkas's gift has to do with the future, so I had the idea to maybe write his perspective in future tense, thinking, what will happen, what's going to be, so that we also have this weird effect of, well, has it happened yet? Or is he, where are we currently in the timeline? And when are these events happening? And how far apart are they? And it'll be interesting to see if I actually stick with that or if I go back to doing a more traditional past tense writing style, which is what I normally have with my writing. Usually I write in past tense, and flashbacks are in what's it called? Perfect past? Or I don't remember. It's a lot of hads. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Selkas actually does end up having future tense as his default tense in his chapters. Because if I do push forward with doing Llewellyn in present tense, I do think that having Selkas in future tense would really fit, especially given how similar these two characters are, much to Llewellyn's chagrin. They are very similar. They would have different tenses from everybody else. And again, just like with Llewellyn, it just really works for Selkas's character and how he sees the world and who he is as a character. So, yeah, I love it. I love his story. I love, from the small bits that I've written of it, how he tells it. He does have a prologue POV in Echoed Thunder, which is the first you'll see of it, and I'm also planning a prequel book that will follow his perspective mostly, so we will see how that turns out. But right now, just for what I've written of it so far, I really enjoy it. Spotted Shadow is pretty good. She's a very clear character. She has her moral convictions like Golden Pelt, but they're much more aligned with my values, so I'm much less tongue-in-cheek about how I present them, which is what I struggle with Golden Pelt. It's what I excel with doing Spotted Shadow. That said, I don't feel like she has any qualities that really make her stand out from some of my other points of view. She doesn't have any particularly strong quirks or things within her inner monologue that come through in the writing. So I think she's more like a standard, good point of view character who has some doubts but is also pretty convinced of her moral judgment. Not a girl boss like Dawnfrost. Like, it's interesting, because there's a lot of parallels between all three of these characters, Spotted Shadow, Dawnfrost, and Golden Pelt, which I assume is why they were chosen for Tennille's Soldier Poet King meme. Because Spotted Shadow is where she wants to be in regards to her career. She's made it to mentor, she's happy with that, she's satisfied with what she has, but she keeps having these situations thrust upon her that kind of force her to reach for more. Even if she doesn't necessarily want more, it becomes a necessity, not a choice. Whereas for Golden Pelt and Dawnfrost, they are actively choosing to try to strive for more than they have currently. So she's a great character in juxtaposition to them. On her own, I would probably put her in Could Be Better, but for the rest of the book, I think that it's not necessarily her own qualities, but how those qualities contrast with the other POV characters that make her land in that pretty good spot. Wildfur. Once I do a little bit more work with him, he'll probably bump up to favorite, because I do love me some troubled, tortured boys, apparently. But yeah, Wildfur is an interesting perspective. I use the word interesting entirely too much. Take a shot every time I say the word interesting. You'll be dead by 20 minutes. I wonder how long this video is even going to be. Have I passed 20 minutes? Yes, I have. Okay. So yeah, the joke holds. Take a shot every time I say interesting. You'll be dead in 20 minutes. Regardless, so Wildfur complements Spotted Shadow, and that's, again, Spotted Shadow is complementary to so many other characters that it really does. That is kind of her shining moment of her POV, is how she complements these other characters. And her and Wildfur are no exception, where Spotted Shadow has the optimism and the hope of bringing cats together. Wildfur is more pessimistic, more alone and isolated. He doesn't really want to have a community. He doesn't feel connected to other cats, just really to Spotted Shadow. And honestly, if it weren't for her optimism, he would probably have just left a long time ago. So they kind of keep each other tethered. Like, she's the one who's keeping him here, and he's the one who, I guess, in a way, helps temper some of that pie in the sky thinking that Spotted Shadow sometimes has, but without being an asshole about it like Goldenpelt is. Wildfur appreciates Spotted Shadow's idealism, but just his existence is enough to keep her a little bit more grounded and focused on the reality of their situation. He isn't actively trying to remind her that things aren't perfect, the way Goldenpelt is constantly giving her reminders of, well, you can't do that thing. Well, that's not how it is. Wildfur doesn't have to say anything. It's just his experience does the speaking for him. And the way that they interact, and the way that that leads him to interact with other characters, where it's almost like his reputation does most of the speaking for him. Because when you actually look at the dialogue that he has with other characters, he's fairly easygoing, fairly polite, aside from like Leafstorm, who he loves to get under her fur. But if he's just talking with someone, he doesn't say very much. He's not mean, he's not antagonistic to anyone, but it's just that reputation, that knowledge that he doesn't quite fit in, that just follows him into these interactions. In fact, it doesn't just follow him, it leads him into these interactions where characters react first to their preconceived notion of him before they actually listen to what he is saying. And Spotted Shadow as well has some of that issue within her own colony, where it's the other characters' perceptions of her that they respond to rather than actually listening to her ideas. So despite being on two ends of the spectrum, optimism and pessimism, they do have something in common with how they're treated and how that view impacts their relationships with others. And they're just perfect complements to each other, and I love they. I care them. And lastly, Wolfthorn. He's less like Goldenpelt, where I know that there's an issue here that I need to address, and more like Ivan, who I just haven't worked with him as much. He is the character from Clouded Moon that I've worked with probably the least, and yes, I'm including Breezeheart in that. Breezeheart has barely had any screen time, and yet I feel like I've developed him more than I've developed Wolfthorn. I think I really just need to talk with Starcat Studio about better understanding what makes Wolfthorn tick, how he really feels about River Colony, what really is keeping him in the Alliance territories and not just leaving the moment that Dawnfrost says that she's not going to leave with him. Why does he continue to stay? There's, at the moment, nothing apparently there for him, so why is he still there? These are major character motivation questions that I don't feel are being addressed thoroughly enough in his early perspective chapters, so I need to go get those answers and find a way to portray them clearly to the reader without spoon-feeding it. So there is definitely some work to do. Wolfthorn is not as major of a character in Shifting Roots. He'll be much more important in the sequel, Shaded River. And yes, there will be a sequel named Shaded River. There's your spoiler, I guess. And that's going to, of course, given the title, follow much more of what's happening in River Colony. So, of course, Wolfthorn will be more important in that book, as is he's kind of the least major of the major characters. I mean, he still has stuff to do in Shifting Roots, but significantly less than some of the other characters. So I have some time to figure him out, but I currently really feel like he needs to be workshopped some more. And I'm very glad that all of the characters that landed in I need to do some work are characters from works in progress where I have the time and the ability to do that work before they appear in published works. I mean, I guess with the exception of Kada and Ivan, who briefly appeared in Like Falling Stars, but their main perspectives have not been published yet. I have time to work on them. The could be betters. Yeah, you're always going to feel like your early work could have been better. I think that if I could just go back and completely rewrite, I would make Like Falling Stars a third-person omniscient point of view book. It almost is, because I think there's actually a moment, like a paragraph, where Julius gets a perspective that I didn't even bother to include here because it's literally a paragraph. Yeah, I think that given that it's supposed to be reminiscent of fairy tales, I would probably go back and make it third-person omniscient and make it even more fairy tale-like through that means. Christopher's is fine. I think it's probably a higher, like if I was ranking these in order of, you know, over here on the left being almost to the other top tier, and the one to the right being almost to the tier below, Christopher would probably be over here. He's almost to the pretty goods. I feel like I could have just exaggerated a few more features and he would be up in the pretty good, maybe even the favorite. He's definitely higher in this tier. He's very close to breaking into pretty good. All my pretty good POVs, I'm enjoying them. I think that I have done the work that needs to be done with them. There's just a few things here and there that are holding them back, whether it's just my own writing or how they are used in the stories themselves that prevent them from being able to clear the gap into the top tier. And the top tier are all guys who are hurting. And I feel like maybe that is just where my writing talent lies. Maybe I just need to write about men suffering, and that will be the peak of my career. Anyway, what are your thoughts on how you would rank your own character POVs if you're a writer? And if you're a reader who has read my works, where would you put these in terms of how well you liked the point of views? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to check out the links in the description to my website, where you can sign up for my newsletter and keep track of all the latest Roselin Books news, Patreon to get some stellar rewards for helping me produce more content, the Etsy bookstore, I guess I will plug it one more time, that's there now. I am now selling on Etsy, so you can no longer purchase books on my website. Unfortunately, the feature that let me do that was just too expensive, and Etsy was the better choice for listing my own products. So you can go on Etsy, you can get the books, the stickers, the buttons, and I'm having a 25% off sale for Halloween, so all October long you can get the books for 25% off, and it's really awesome. I'm actually really enjoying selling on Etsy because I can print my own shipping labels, and that saves me a ton of time. I don't have to go to the post office, which is one of my least favorite things to do. So the Etsy thing's really working out, and you should go check out the store. And of course, don't forget the social media links if you want to see more from me. I'm not super active on social media anymore. I don't have the time, and it was taking a toll on my mental health. But if you want to look at it, there are sometimes things on there that are a little bit fun. On Twitter, I like to retweet other indie authors, especially in the horror community. And on Tumblr, there's all kinds of aesthetic posts. Instagram is usually pictures of what I'm reading, so you can get a sneak peek at what's going to be in the monthly, or not monthly, sorry, in the reading wrap-up videos that are no longer monthly. And you can see my last one to find out why that is. And I am finally going to stop rambling. Thank you so much for watching, and keep writing till next time.